Chapter 11, Muscular System, Axial and Appendicular Muscles, Part 4. So, more muscles that move the humerus. So we have the deltoid muscle, that upper shoulder muscle. Its origin is the acromial end of the clavicle, the acromion and spine of the scapula. It sort of wraps around from front to back. And its insertion is the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. The deltoid muscle is able to flex and medially rotate the arm. So flex, pull it forward anteriorly as well as medially rotate it. It can abduct the arm, so pull the arm out laterally. And it can extend and laterally rotate the arm. So laterally rotate that way, or extend, take it from being anteriorly positioned and move it posteriorly and maybe even further back to hyperextension. So again, the deltoid muscle is a big muscle and it's able to do opposing motions, again, because the entire muscle doesn't have to contract. It could just contract the anterior portion to get flexion or medially rotation, or it could contract the posterior portion to give extension and lateral rotate the arm. All right, moving on to muscles that move the forearm. Well, it turns out the first one, biceps brachii, overlaps with muscles that move the arm or humerus because its origins, it has two of them. It includes the supraglenoid tubercle of the scapula, which is above the glenoid cavity, and the coracoid process of the scapula. So origins in the scapula, and its insertion is the radial tuberosity of the radius. So it crosses two joints, shoulder joint and elbow joint, So it's able to flex the arm at the shoulder to pull the arm out anteriorly at the shoulder. It's also able to flex the forearm at the elbow to pull the forearm toward the upper arm. And also it can help to supinate the forearm. Primarily flex the arm at the shoulder or flex the forearm at the elbow. Or both at the same time. All right, brachialis. Brachialis muscle is underneath the biceps brachii, so still on the anterior side of the humerus, but underneath biceps brachii. So here's biceps brachii, brachialis. And its origin, the distal anterior surface of the humerus. It inserts into the coronoid process of the ulna. So origin in the humerus, inserts into the ulna. And it does one thing, and that flexes the forearm at the elbow. So flexes the forearm at the elbow. Then we have a little further down, more toward the forearm region, is brachioradialis. Brachioradialis goes from the lateral supracondylar ribs of the humerus and inserts into the styloid process of the radius, so all the way down here. What does it do? It flexes the forearm. So again, it crosses one joint, the elbow joint, so even though most of the belly is more distal, it will cause flexion of the forearm at the elbow. It is also the very lateralmost muscle of the forearm. All right, triceps brachii on the posterior side of the humerus. Triceps brachii, three bellies, three origins. So it has the origin in the infraglenoid tubercle of the scapula, origin in the posterior humerus above the radial groove, and posterior humerus below the radial groove. So two of them on the humerus, but one of them does cross the shoulder joint to have an origin in the scapula. And its insertion is the olecranon of the elbow. What does it do? Well, it crosses two joints. So it extends the entire arm at the shoulder, which would then take the arm, if it's already up anteriorly somewhat, we'll pull it back posteriorly, maybe even hyperextend it further back. It also adducts the arm at the shoulder to pull it down if it's already raised laterally. And because it crosses the elbow joint, it will extend the forearm at the elbow joint, move the forearm away from the upper arm. And it is, of course, an antagonist to the biceps brachii if the biceps brachii is the one acting. All right, supinator. Lower arm crosses the joint between the ulna and radius, and it supinates the forearm area. Pronator teres, so muscles that move the forearm. Pronator teres. It's, surprise, surprise, going to pronate the forearm. Its origin is the medial epicondyle of the humerus, as well as the coronoid process of the ulna, and it inserts into the lateral surface of the radius. Goes across like that. And it pronates the forearm. Then we have flexor carpi radialis. Again, this is the anterior side of the forearm. Flexor carpi radialis, its origin, medial epicondyle of humerus, inserts into the base of metacarpals 2 and 3. There it is across. Flexes the wrist and abducts the hand. So flexes the wrist, pulls the hand forward this way, and abducts or pulls it out that way laterally. Again, if you remember, you're in anatomical position. All right, palmaris longus goes toward the very center of the palm. So its origin, medial epicondyle of humerus, inserts into the palmar aponeuroses. There it is here. What does it do? It weakly flexes the wrist, so it pulls the hand up a little bit. It's not a very powerful muscle. Turns out that if you sort of clench your hand, you can see the palmaris longus pop out if you have it. If you don't have it, you won't see it pop out. This person only has one on one hand. Some people have two, one on each hand. Some people have one. Some people don't have any. And it doesn't matter. It's not at all a useful muscle. All right, next up is flexor carpi ulnaris. Flexor carpi ulnaris. Its origins, the medial epicondyle of the humerus and the olecranon of the ulna, and it inserts into the pisiform and hamate bones and the base of metacarpal 5. So it is a medial muscle. What does it do? It's a flexor, so it flexes the wrist. It also can adduct the hand, so turn the hand sort of this way. All right, continuing on, if we remove those superficial muscles, underneath it is another broad muscle called Flexor Digitorum superficialis, and it flexes the wrist and also flexes fingers 2 through 5. So flexes the wrist, and also, as you can see, tendons go up to the fingers 2 through 5 to flex those fingers. If we remove this muscle, then we can see Flexor Digitorum profundus. Flexor Digitorum profundus also flexes the wrist and flexes fingers 2 through 5. So you can see, again, the tendons are connecting to the distal phalanges, middle phalanges, and proximal phalanges. All right, flipping over to the posterior side of the forearm, we have the muscles that do extension. These, surprise, surprise, are called extensors. So we have the extensor carpi radialis longus, as shown here. So there's brachialis radialis. So next to that is extensor carpi radialis longus. That muscle, origin, lateral supracondylar ridge of humerus, and inserts into the base of metacarpal 2. And it will extend the wrist and also help to abduct the wrist, to pull the hand out this way. Then we have extensor carpi radialis brevis, origin, the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, goes down to the base of metacarpal 3. And it will extend the wrist and help to abduct the hand. So brevis and longus, they both do the same thing. Then we have here extensor digitorum. Extensor digitorum, as you can see, its tendons go up toward the fingers. So it will help to extend fingers 2 through 5. Extend fingers 2 through 5. So origin, lateral epicondyle of humerus, insertion, distal and middle phalanges of fingers 2 through 5. Then we have, so it extends the wrist, extends fingers 2 through 5. Extends the wrist, extends fingers 2 through 5. Then we have extensor digiti minimi, a little bitty muscle here. Extensor digiti minimi, origin, lateral epicondyle of humerus, inserts into the proximal phalanx of finger 5. So it only extends the pinky, and it also helps to extend the wrist a little bit. But primarily, it's there to move the pinky. So you can see its tendon going up toward the finger 5. Then way over here on the medial side, we have extensor carpi ulnaris, same side as the ulna. Its origin, lateral epicondyle humerus, inserts into the base of metacarpal 5. There it is. And it extends the wrist and adducts the hand. Adducts, moves the hand that way. Then we also have these two smaller muscles that go to the thumb. So we have extensor pollicis longus that goes to the thumb. It extends the thumb and also can weakly extend the wrist, but primarily it is extending, pulling out the thumb. Then we have abductor pollicis longus. Abductor pollicis longus goes down and abducts the thumb and can also weakly extend the wrist. So the pollicis muscles help to move the thumb. There are more of them, but those are only two we need to know. All right, moving on to the leg. So when you look at the leg, you can break down the thigh into 3 main compartments. You've got the anterior compartment, which is obviously toward the front, the medial compartment toward the inner thighs area, and the hamstrings, the posterior compartment. Anterior compartment, those muscles involved in extending the lower leg. The medial muscles help to adduct the thigh, pull the legs in, and then the hamstrings, the posterior muscles, help to flex the leg and extend the thigh. So we will start with an anterior view. Here is the muscle psoas major. Psoas major comes down from the vertebral column down into the femur. And then we also have iliacus. Iliacus origin is in the iliac crest, goes down to the femur. Turns out the psoas major and iliacus insert into the same place in the femur, so they are sometimes known collectively as iliopsoas. But for us, we have psoas major and iliacus. And what do? They both flex the thigh. They help to raise the leg up anteriorly, flex the thigh at the hip joint, the coxal point. Then we have this small little muscle going from the pubis down to the femur. So it goes from the pectineal line of the pubis down to the pectineal line of the femur. A little bitty muscle. What does it do? It flexes the thigh at the hip and also helps to adduct the thigh. So it helps to pull the thigh in medially or flex it out anteriorly. Then we have adductor longus. Here's adductor longus. Origin is in the pubis near the pubic symphysis. It inserts into the linea aspera on the back of the femur. When it contracts, surprise, surprise, it adducts the thigh at the hip joint. And it also can help to flex the thigh at the hip. So it also can help to flex the thigh. Big one, adduction. Then we have adductor magnus. Magnus is a huge muscle. You can see part of it anteriorly, but if you remove the hamstrings, you can see most of it underneath the hamstrings. Its origin is the inferior ramus of the pubis and the ischial tuberosity. Its insertion, linea aspera of the femur, as well as the adductor tubercle of the femur. And what does it do? Surprise, surprise, it adducts the thigh. However, it also can help to flex the thigh at the hip. And it also can extend the thigh and laterally rotate the thigh at the hip. Again, it has a huge insertion, so depending on which part of the muscle contracts, can lead to a different action. And then we have gracilis. Gracilis is the most medial muscle in the thigh. Gracilis' origin, inferior ramus of the pubis. It inserts into the upper medial surface of the tibia, so it crosses 2 joints, the hip joint and the knee joint. And what can it do? It helps to adduct and flex the thigh at the hip, and can also help to flex the leg at the knee, so help to bend to flex the leg at the knee. And that is where we're going to stop for this part of the lecture.